Hello! So today I'm going to be taking you all through my teacher portfolio. Right here you should see my home page, which I just put a little bit about me there. So I have a picture, a link to my resume, a link to my teaching philosophy, along with a little bio about it's kind of like a summary of my teacher philosophy, but it does have a bit of a different focus. And then I can't play the audio from this video here, but this is a video of me explaining the bio above and my teacher philosophy. So it's an interesting little addition to my website. I guess an interesting thing about this website is I actually began it my freshman year for my college success course, and I've been kind of adding to it since, so it's pretty big now. I have tabs for my classroom, which kind of focuses more on what it would look like in my classroom when I am teaching. And then teaching is more for when I'm applying for positions at jobs, because it has more of the professional aspects of my teaching career, such as my teaching philosophy, along with my views for different subjects. I only have reading and language arts up here, but in my editing bar, I have a page for every subject that I haven't quite finished yet. And then I have this tab for the parents and families of my students, which I will show you soon. My career tab is where I have my resume, which is up to date with my most current positions. And then I have the contact page, which allows them to directly reach out to me, and it also has the link to my blog. So I guess we'll start with the My Classroom tab. In the My Classroom tab, we start with my classroom management theory. And I have the philosophy of a democratic classroom here, which talks about how it aligns with my teaching philosophy. And in case parents hadn't read my teaching philosophy already yet, there's a link to it right down here. And then I also have my classroom contract, which we will use in my classroom for students to make rules for the beginning of the year for conduct. It's mostly student-made, so I will start with some prompting, and then they will go through and make their own rules. Okay, so another interesting thing about my website is Wix has the ability to allow you to translate your website into different pages. One of the things that I have done with my website to make it more accessible to parents is the creation of Spanish translations on my pages. I think Wix is really easy to add more languages to, so in the future when I find out if I have more languages in my classroom, I figure that can be a goal that I can partake in the future. But for now I just have Spanish. It is Google Translate though, so I do not know Spanish, but knowing my experience of Google Translate, this is probably not perfect. And when I am hired in the future, I would appreciate if someone were to look at my website to retranslate it. Okay, so let me go back to English. So after my classroom management plan, we have my behavior management tab, which talks about how I would manage different behaviors in my classroom. I would use PBIS. I have my reward system, which goes into detail about how I would do class rewards for my students, from individual to group to whole class. And then here's some pictures that I've made to go along, so that you could see more about the reward. And then I have my consequences chart, which has inappropriate behaviors leveled. And then I have how I would come up with consequences to manage that behavior, which would be using the ABC method, which is finding out the cause of the behavior and using that to find out more. And then on this page, I do have a link to a video about the check-in checkout system, because that's something I believe in using with my students. And again, I cannot play this quite yet. Okay, so I also have my classroom community tab, which has kind of what I would do in my classroom to build my classroom community. And one of those things is a morning meeting. So I have information about how I would use a morning meeting in my class. And then here is a slideshow with all of the different parts of a morning meeting. On this page, I've also linked some examples of morning meetings that I have made for my students. So if they click these little PowerPoints here, you can see examples of virtual morning meetings that I have planned in my classroom. And I like them a lot. So we have this one here that I planned for a day in September. And then I have another one I have two more. So this is something that any teacher could go on and use if they so desired for their own students, if they changed it to fit their own needs. So yeah, I have those two there. And then I have what I would like my classroom environment to look like, which follows the principles of the universal design of learning, which makes learning accessible for all students. So here I have how I would model my learning environment using the UDL access strategy. And then down here, I have a list of procedures we would use in my classroom for different times of the day, such as walking in the hallway, transitions, turning in work, and yeah, and these pictures are examples of what I would like in my classroom. All right, last tab in my classroom is the learning theories I would use. I would use inquiry-based learning, and conveniently in this class, we did make an inquiry-based learning thing link. So for parents, I thought it would be really interesting to include this in here. And I figured that in the future, I could add more to it where it includes student work that we've made using inquiry-based methods so parents could, or potential higher situations could see what my students have done. Okay, so then we have teaching, which my big important thing is my teaching philosophy. As I've shown, it's linked in probably 3 different other areas of my website so that parents can see this. So it's just a little brief spiel about how I want to teach in my classroom. Then another important tab I feel is my professional responsibility tab that talks about how I will use ethical conduct in my classroom for different situations, which are outlined down here. And it has my pledges to my parents, colleagues, and community. So, and it has a link to the Code of Professional Conduct for anyone who doesn't know about it. Then I have my assessment tab, which talks about how I would use assessment in my classroom. So we have my assessment philosophy, how I would use assessment to drive instruction, and then different forms of literacy assessments that I would use in my classroom. I haven't quite gotten to assessing other subjects, but I definitely want to add more to this page. Okay. And my last tab in teaching is reading and language arts. And so far, this tab has how I would teach reading, different activities that I have made for my students, and a little slideshow for all of the different areas of reading, which are fluency, phonics, phonemic awareness, and comprehension and vocabulary. And then I have different lessons that I have also made for each area of reading, which can also be accessed by clicking these little links and downloaded for any parent who would want to, or potential other teacher who would maybe want to use these lessons, or someone who may want to hire me to see what I'm capable of. So here's an example of an abbreviated lesson plan I've made. Very short and sweet, but to the point. Okay. So, I also have other tabs that are in construction for other subjects, but they're not shown on my published version yet. So in the Parents to Families tab, I have a letter for all of the parents of my students so that they can, this would be sent out to them at the beginning of the year, but for any parent who would want to access it at a later date, it would be here. I'm working on getting this translated into Spanish, so any other parent could see it. I have how parents can get involved in my classroom, which has a link to my class newsletter and a Google form I've made, which is not working right now, but that's okay. So I'll take you to the classroom newsletter. This newsletter would be updated as I've made more. So far, I only have one, which talks about different forms of assessment I would use in the classroom, a good way for parents to get to know what's going on. And then I have some ways on the side here that parents could be involved and why I would like parents to be involved in my classroom. this Google form thing is definitely something I'm going to have to fix. Next, I have my Link to Literacy tab, which helps parents make that connection at home with their students to different areas of literacy. So I have different tips and resources for parents to use with their students. And then I have a list of some books that I like when I was growing up that parents could also use to read to their students because they're recommendations of mine. Lastly, I do have my resume here, which has my skills, my past and present jobs, some references. It's very simple. I figured that most of my professional repertoire will be shown through my portfolio. And then lastly, we have this contact page, which has a direct link to contact me here and a link to my blog that we have been working on throughout the class if you click here. And yeah, that's all I have for this. Sorry it's long, but if you have any questions, feel free to let me know, and I hope that we can do this again in the future. Bye!